6 billion gorillas for whom the graves yawn. 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 6 billion gorillas for whom the for the root. 6 billion gorillas for whom the graves yawn. 6 billion gorillas for whom the graves yawn. 6 billion gorillas for whom the graves yawn. Now here the muher for the root. 6 billion gorillas for whom the graves yawn. 6 billion gorillas for whom the graves yawn. 6 billion gorillas for whom the graves yawn. Now here the muher for the root.